Hey, it's the Beard with another episode of You Know Me at Golden Owls Podcast. Hey, Buddha, how's your week going?
Week's going good. Week's going well. You know, it's Wednesday. You know, this show is previously recorded, and I think some of our viewers don't know, or listeners, I should say. Maybe they don't know that you and I are very active in our community theaters here.
Yep.
You know, the Island Players over in St. Simon's, and a few shows over at the Brunswick Actors Guild.
Yep, and I actually I did a couple shows at the Ritz.
That's right. You were at the Ritz as well.
Yeah.
You and I both like being on stage.
Oh, I do, yes.
But there's definitely no show without our guests here today.
That's right, and a lot of people don't realize it, but it's more than just the actors on stage. It takes a lot of work to actually have a show.
Right.
And without those important people in the background, there is no show. There is nothing, right? There, if you don't have someone for lights, there's no show. And of course, the most important part are the sound, the sound tech, right? So that leads us to our guest today. Go ahead, introduce yourself, Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian Murphy, and I've been sitting over here patiently waiting to enter the conversation as pretty much as my job description states. Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty much doing exactly what sound guys do right now. Yeah.
just waiting in the background, waiting for your
exactly, waiting on a cue. Exactly.
That's right, waiting. And how important are cues?
Cues are way more important than people give them credit for, and it makes me laugh even more when you get in a situation where the producer of a show or somebody that's bringing it to you that hasn't done a theater thing before doesn't know that. That's always fun.
Yeah,
that's always a good time. It's like, just hit the play button.
It's like it doesn't work
47 times in a very specific order.
Right.
Oh, wait, no, those 3 songs are too quiet. But it's fine. Everybody has their little area of expertise in their realm and the thing that they're good at and that they enjoy kind of taking command of. And that's always been one for me, even if it can be frustrating at times.
Right.
So how long have you been doing this?
In some form or another, I've been behind a console running sound for probably graduated Glen Academy in 2003. I did a lot more lighting there, actually, than I did sound stuff. But very shortly after that, I started doing weddings with Paul O'Berry and started kind of getting into the basics of the sound side of things. But for the better part of 20 years, I'd say.
Wow.
What got you started?
Honestly, when I went to Glen Academy, like I said, graduated class of 2003, go Terrors and stuff. And I had a friend that was in tech theater, and they were always telling me that it was great because all they ever did when they didn't have shows going on was like hang out and they'd drop the screen in the auditorium and play Halo all day. And well, this sounds like my kind of class. Right. And I totally got into the class with that intention, not really realizing that it was going to set me on this path that I'm on now where I'm working at the Ritz, which was something that I did a lot. They were in the middle of renovating when I was in high school, so we had a lot of shows that would normally happen at the Ritz come through our theater at Glen Academy at the time. And here I am at Glen Academy now helping the kids with that program, which I'm sure we'll get into. And it's just funny how happenstance, how it totally was a lark. It was like, oh, yeah, I could use a free period. and here we are.
And now this is what you do.
Right. Exactly.
Now, speaking about that, like, my daughter, she's very interested in this, right? So, I mean, what do you tell kids that are interested in getting into the tech booth?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, and obviously, I've worked with her doing a pajama game at Glen Academy this year, and really, there's no experience. There's no replacement for just doing it and kind of confronting that fear. You don't realize how much. I know actors feel it on the stage. You get up there and you biff a line, and everybody's watching. That translates to being in the booth, too. Sometimes you're going to miss a cue, and the lights aren't going to go out when they should. And you just got to let that happen and on with the show. And I think the thing that roadblocks a lot of people from doing it is the temerity and the not getting in there and just doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
Just kind of like this podcast.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, it's the same thing. We were just like, we talked about doing a podcast, and we bought the equipment, and then we just hit the record button and
see what happens.
Yeah, see what happens. Where does this go? Where's it going to go from here?
Right. And honestly, sometimes, and maybe it's not the best life advice for like actually physically dangerous situations, but when you're talking artistic endeavors, which ultimately I think is what draws me to the tech side of things, is I'm a musician too, but there's something about like my Lego taking the TV remote apart when I was a kid brain that really jives with the artistic and creative side of being in the booth. And the only way to really do that in a lot of situations is head first and full send.
And
you
just,
know?
Yeah, just do it.
Right.
So you just learn on your own? Like if you buy a new equipment or you see new technology, do you just figure it out, or?
I try to, for the most part. I think I've always been blessed in a way where it's easy for me to kind of dive in. I'm that kind of tech nerd that maybe sadistically enjoys opening a manual and reading a couple of pages. I know that's against the grain, sorry. But yeah, very much. I mean, because at the end of the day, like I said, it's the only way that you're going to get that experience. And if you want to be good at something, you have to learn about it and practice it. I just bought a camera.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get good at it unless I start shooting photos.
Right, exactly.
I bought it a month ago and I've got over 4,000 images on my computer. Most of them are probably terrible, but I can look at it and see the progress week by week and me figuring it out just by shutter.
Right,
You know?
and dialing in all the different
Right.
stuff that you can do on the camera.
And that's probably the biggest thing that I do, and I think I'd apply it to photography just like I would sound stuff or anything else. It's easy to pick that camera up and put it in a setting that does all the work for you. You can just hit the button. And I immediately eschewed that and put it in manual mode and said, no, I'm going to figure out what happens when I change the shutter speed or the f-stop and that's how I learned it, by taking a bunch of images that look like crap first. You know?
Right, and then you figure out that you can take nice pictures
Right.
once you dive into the
Right. And
into
I
the camera.
very much, the sound side of things, I really don't look at it a whole lot differently than that. I guarantee you there's some folks out there that you could find that have heard me mix a pretty terrible sounding show at some point. Because I'm not even here to say I'm a fully formed tech now and that I'm the greatest at it. But I'm always putting in the effort to learn the next step and try to make it as good as I possibly can, given my knowledge and my skill set at that moment, you know?
Yeah.
And the only way you do that is by seeing a knob you've never seen before and turning it. See what it does. Right. You push the button, you turn the knob, you find out. And yeah, maybe you crack a couple of eggs in the process of making an omelet, but eventually you cook a pretty solid omelet.
Yeah,
you know?
make a delicious omelet by
Right.
doing that.
I mean, it's taken me 20 years to get to that point, but I feel like the omelets are getting there every day, a little more, you know?
So you've worked the booth in the theater, and you've worked the booth here at the Blue Door for music.
Right.
What are some of the major differences between, let's say, a play or a musical as to a band playing live?
Well, I think a lot of it, I've done, especially in the last couple of years, I've gotten into the musical side of doing theater more because of Glen Academy and them doing more of that. But the theater is a lot more, it can be a lot more challenging in different ways because you kind of never know what source you're going to be dealing with from day to day. Because there will be a week at the Ritz where I walk in and we have the Indian Association come in with a type of percussion instrument that I've never heard of, and I've got to figure out the best way to mic that up, along with floor mics and lavaliers for 3 actors that are speaking a language that I don't comprehend.
Right.
You know? And I turn around and do that, and then the next day I'm running a movie for the big read, and you walk upstairs and you put the DVD in, because we still have a DVD player. You put it in, you hit the play button, you turn the volume up. It's like, cool, it works.
Let me go get coffee.
Right. The music side of it, I think, is more of a, I don't know if a logistical challenge is the right word, but I think it's a lot of the stuff that people don't give any credence to running sound in a live environment like that, is that it's so much more about than just getting the kick drum to sound right. Because there's always this checklist in the back of my head. It's like, all right, well, the next band has a drummer that has a 3-piece kit instead of a 5-piece, and the vocalist is stage left instead of stage right, and they have 2 guitar players and a keyboard player for the next one, and the bassist is using his own, so it's just different. There's a lot more. It's not as structured as theater,
Right.
and that the structure in theater can present its own challenge because a lot of times your rehearsal times are compressed. And you've got a cast that's taken 3 to 6 months to learn a show, and you get a week and a half to tech it.
Yeah, I was
you're
going
talking, you know.
I was going to mention that because Bella, my daughter, she
Right.
does sound, and she's helping out with the play that's going to happen at the Island Players Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, I was gonna say Little Shop.
And they just started doing mics,
Right.
And they're going to do Hell Week next week,
Right.
So she's like she'd never seen the script before,
Right. And there's a reason it's called Hell Week.
Right.
And it's because that's exactly what it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know? But it's still a lot more regimented because she always, like, the sources are more steady, if that makes sense. It's the same actor on the same microphone playing the same
Right.
character every time. And according to a script and in
Yeah.
a particular order. I think a lot of times the music side of it is a lot more seat of your pants. Hold on to your butts. You know what I mean?
Waiting for that cue, and sometimes that cue comes in a little different
Right.
form each time. So.
Well, and I would love if there was a world where some of the bands that I've dealt with over the years had cues, because that would be a starting point. But instead, they send you a list 2 weeks out. And it's like, oh, here's our input list. And they show up and they go, oh, well, you can pretty much ignore that because this guitar player isn't here. We only have one drummer this time. It's like, well, then that list, why? Okay, whatever.
Yeah,
we're going to move the kick drum to 3. And it's just.
Now, when bands come play and they bring in their own amps, does that also play into figuring out the sounds?
It can. Mostly it becomes a game of, like, you get a lot of stodgy sound guys. I'm not saying I'm not this guy too sometimes. Sometimes it's just too damn loud, you know?
Yeah.
But mostly it's playing that balance game of understanding that there are certain bands that are, like, some of the bands that we have coming up on the 25th for that metal show.
Mm-hmm.
One of the bands, Dying Whale, is a 2-piece. And Matt Zagorski, the guy that plays guitar in that band, is a lovely guy. I love Matt to death. He's also a phenomenal photographer. But they're like a super noisy, loud hardcore band. And there will only be a certain amount of me going, hey, can you turn that down? And he's going to give me the phantom, yeah, sure, and not touch the knob and turn his hand to the left a little bit. And I'm not going to fight that and argue
Right.
that. And that's part of the job, is being adaptable enough to make that work in whatever space you're in.
Right.
It might not be the ideal, but it's how that band chooses and wants to sound. So that's what you aim for, and you do the best you can with it, you know?
Now, speaking about space, let's talk about the Hinge.
Okay.
So, how did it get started? Whose idea?
Well, I don't know that any one of us can take claim to the idea. I know that Enzo Centofanti here, Centofanti, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, Enzo.
He'll find you.
Right. He'll find. Well, he really will find me. He knows I'm next door, you know? He has always had aspirations. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He's always had aspirations of doing something with this other space in the building, but it's a lot. You know, it's a lot of work to go in there. I mean, it was all that racking and storage stuff had to come down. And we did 2 years ago now, in July, which was a terrible idea, we did the first music festival that Brandon Priest booked here. It was called Prosper Fest, and it was skateboarding associated and all that.
I remember that.
And we had a great time, but there was a stage outside, a stage in here in the main room in the Blue Door. And it was in July, and it was just blazing hot. And we made a couple of decisions right then and there. That one was that we needed to do it at a better time of year, weather-wise. Excuse me. 2 was that we needed to do it as indoors as possible. And it all just kind of collided in a perfect way for that following year in October when we did Coastal Chaos, the first
Yes.
Coastal Chaos. The first, like, there's been another one since.
I hope there is. I mean, that was awesome.
We won't talk about it yet, but we've been talking about it yet. And it just got to the point where several months before that, Brandon and Enzo had talked, and we talked about doing the festival at a bigger location, like at Mary Ross or something like that. But outdoors is always sketchy at best. You hate
Yeah.
to put all that effort in and then have it rain that day.
Mm-hmm.
And so Brandon and Enzo got together and figured out, and they got into that room and they tore out probably 45 or 50 feet worth of that racking and used some of that lumber and some stuff that Enzo had and built the stage that's in there. And we did Prosper Fest in there. Me and a friend of mine, Nathan Potts, brought all of our equipment, rented some stuff from Paul O'Berry, another local guy that does AV work, and got in there and did the show, put up lights and all that. And again, just like Prosper, it was a huge success. We sold almost 200 tickets to that festival in a small town. That It proves that people want that here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And Enzo and Brandon kind of talked about it after that, and literally, like, that night we were talking about it, and Brandon had already kind of decided that if it was in any way possible that he was going to start doing his shows here. instead of at the waterfront.
Yeah.
Which a lot of us have fond memories of the waterfront as a venue. Don't get me wrong, I have a lot of emotional attachment to the place. It's always been a terrible venue. It rains inside when it rains outside, you know. So it's nice to finally have a place that's set up and built in a way that we can walk in, hit a couple of switches, and go.
Right.
And even that's been a lot leading up to that, because like I've worked at other with Tony Mills doing Heebie Jeebie back in the day, and that was a lot of fun. And it was an overwhelmingly positive experience, but still, every step along the way is kind of a lesson in figuring out what was right, what was wrong. And this really, I mean, I had a lot of input at Heebie, don't get me wrong, I'm not discounting anyone, but this was really the first time that I've been able to be involved from kind of the ground floor up. And I had already helped Brandon with the festivals, and he just finally decided, we decided, let's give this a shot for real. And as long as we can kind of delegate things in the right way, where I don't want to say in charge of, but responsible for the technical stuff, and use my expertise and what I know and what I've gained over the years working with Anthony Stubelik and doing all that kind of stuff, that, that it was something we could turn into something special. And I always joke with Brandon, joke but serious, no disrespect again to anyone, but I always tell him, like, any idiot can just put two speakers in a building and do the Ralph Wiggum thing, right? I'm a venue, right? And like, if we were going to do that, it needed to be a special space and something that was memorable and something that wasn't just that.
Yeah.
And I hope, obviously it's still a young venture. We've had 2 shows now.
But 2 amazing shows.
Yeah. They both went head over heels better than I could have ever expected. And it really does feel like the space is more than the sum of its parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's thanks to a lot of people's hard work. I'm not remotely, it's not just me. Enzo and Brandon worked really hard to put that stage together before I was ever involved. My buddy Nathan helped a lot. The Glen Academy Theater Department let me borrow scaffolding for a couple days to put up the lights and all that good stuff. Ashley Ember was here a lot working. A lot of the reason we have video footage and stuff of all these things that were happening along the way is because of her. So, like, she's not sitting here over my shoulder.
You just want to wave.
So, so for some of our listeners, what is the Hinge and where is it?
The Hinge is the second room at the Blue Door, which is a music venue that Enzo has run here in town for 7 or 8 years now. A while.
Wow.
And it's the second room here. Generally speaking, we're doing all ages shows, because I always felt that was a very crucial thing. Especially that's why I was helping Tony with Heebie Jeebie back in the day, because, and obviously no disrespect to anyone, I've played in bar bands around here and done that, and I love a lot of those guys and work with them and do all of that good stuff, but like, we just didn't have a place here for all original like concerts.
Right.
And not, like concerts. I don't know how else to explain it. And somewhere that kids could go out and safely be exposed to that and hear music that was a little off the beaten path.
Yeah.
Because that's the other part of it. It is what it is. That is important to me. Like punk rock and metal, all that stuff shaped my existence coming up. And being somebody that wasn't necessarily inside every lane of a social norm, Right.
And I can speak for that because my son Tony, he's really big into it, and he's really big into the local bands.
Right.
And if it wasn't an all-age venue, he wouldn't be able to experience the bands that have gone through here so far.
Right, and that's exactly it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I don't get out of here if you're an adult. It's not that.
Right.
And it's been great because I really can claim that we've had 6 to 60 in that building.
Yeah.
Because my buddy Nathan's nephew was 5 or 6 years old, and he was in here on his mom's shoulder with earplugs in. It's the cover photo for the venue right now on Facebook and Instagram, I think. Is him up on his mom's shoulders with his earplugs in. And even at 5 years old, and from a side profile, you can see that wonder and just...
Yeah.
If you couldn't hear that, I was staring in wonder.
Jaw drop.
Yeah, exactly. And it literally from 6 to 60, and guys like Greg Smith, who was a huge supporter of Heebie back in the day, showed up damn near every show that we did, and is still out here doing it now. Our first show at the Hinge, Greg bought 10 tickets and just gave them out to kids in his neighborhood and said, look, you say you got nothing to do. Here's something to do. Talk about it or be about it. you know?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we're trying to do there.
Yeah.
So what are some of the bands that have come through the Hinge so far?
Let's see if I'm good at this.
See if
Because
you
I get so
remember.
caught up in the running the sound part
Right.
that I don't even think about the rest. The first show was Brandon Priest's band, Morn, his new band. It was actually their first show. The drummer in his band, Morn, used to be in a band in South Carolina called Imprint. They came and played. And then it was Drosera from Gainesville, Florida. Burly hardcore guys. Had a really good time. And another band called O'Shiner from Savannah, who was great. Super sweet guys, too. It's so funny. Like, the lady Sandy that was bartending here that night had nothing but positive to say. You could tell as people were walking into the crowd, she's, I don't know about this. You know? And at the end of the night, she's, I can't believe how sweet everybody was. And it was just, you know, and I think it surprised a lot of the attendees just as much to look over there and see this, like, kind of island lady and chilling. But it's awesome, and I think it's really great. That's the other thing about those kind of shows and that kind of scene is I think there's a lot more love and respect and unity amongst those folks than people that are outside it will just never understand and never get.
Yeah, you're absolutely true.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they, I don't think they'll understand unless they actually come to a show.
Right. Oh, those angry kids in the mosh pit. I once heard somebody recently refer to mosh pits as silly goose behavior.
Silly goose behavior.
Because
Okay.
it's just a bunch of guys that get so excited they just got to push their friends. And man, they're so right. How many times have you really seen a mosh pit where people are like all angry? Mostly people are grinning like idiots.
Yeah, they're like smiling
because they're having a great time, right?
Like I let my son, who's 13 years old, I let him on the
Right.
mosh pit, and he was having a blast.
Right, exactly.
And they were,
And yeah, and then so that was the first show, and that was predominantly, don't get me wrong, heavy, like metallic, heavy, semi-offensive hardcore music. You know what I mean?
This is not ballroom dancing, folks.
Exactly. I guess you could ballroom dance to it, but it'd be different.
I do all the time.
Foxtrot.
Yeah, at home, I practice.
Yeah, in the Charleston.
But then our most recent show, I forget what the date was.
It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. I'm waiting to look at this flyer, but local band. Oh, it was April 6th. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say it wasn't that far.
We had a local band called Kicklighter.
Yeah.
Who Asher is one of my coworkers at Portman's Music. His band is great, and they're local, and they've played 2 shows here since they started in 2022.
Wow.
Because the first time they played here, they played at a local bar, who I would say, I'm not going to name names, but I don't know where it was. But they got up there and poured their hearts out
Yep.
for an hour or more. And as soon as they were done, they were hearing from the bar, oh, thank God, now we can turn on some country music. And they just felt like they weren't welcome.
Oh,
And that's a bummer because
yeah.
they're awesome. They write great
They
music.
were awesome, and they're young too.
They're very young, and they're brothers, and they write awesome music. And I was really excited for them to play and to see how excited they were. It's like, damn, there's a place like this in Brunswick for us,
Yes.
right? And it was Kicklighter. It was a band from Jacksonville, the Mighty Dig Dog.
Yeah. Oh my God, they were
Mighty
awesome.
Dig
You gotta. Yeah, cause they're on Spotify, correct?
Yeah, they are. They
Yeah.
are.
You gotta listen to them. They're amazing.
If you haven't heard There's Bees in There, you haven't lived yet.
Oh, really?
I love Dig Dog. Dig Dog has been around long enough that they played at Heebie Jeebie back in the day. Not to brag, but I'm pretty sure we're the first people that ever booked them in Brunswick. And it's great. They love coming here because, they genuinely enjoy coming here. They're going to be at Tipsy's.
Are they really?
Saturday.
Huh.
This upcoming Saturday. And when does this air?
Saturday.
There
noon.
you go.
Yeah.
They're going to be at Tipsy's tonight.
Everyone, go to Tipsy's. Great band showing up there.
Yeah. Another local group called White Lighter Club,
Yeah.
who
Brandon.
Brandon.
The other Brandon.
Right, who's also a filmmaker
Yeah.
and
An extra on The Walking Dead. Did you
yeah, exactly. He was in what's the that other movie that was out about the chef and the crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh,
The Menu.
The Menu. Yeah.
Yeah, Ray Fiennes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon was in that movie too.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, chef.
And that's actually how I met. I think I remember that's how I met Brandon was.
Through
'cause
that.
I do background extra stuff too, and
Right.
met that way. Yeah.
Right. But Brandon and then Ashton Rowland, who was in Hot Banana Coffee.
Yep.
And the same deal. You know, Hot Banana Coffee does great playing the bars around here and doing the cover scene. But all those folks are great musicians
Yeah.
who write music too. And it's like there's nowhere in town to highlight that. And,
Yeah.
You know? But it's them and then a group of young, like teenage kids called the Shortages.
Yeah.
That this wasn't their first show. They've played at Palm Coast at open mic and at the Golden Isles Music Awards. But this was their first concert like that.
Yep.
And, well, I don't even know if that's fair. Like I said, they've played at other places, too. But the same deal, and that's ultimately who this venue is for those kids that don't have, they don't want to have to go out there and play ZZ Top songs for 3 hours,
Right.
which I would do, especially if we're talking Just Got Paid. That's my jam.
Yeah, and we both have beards,
Right,
so we
right.
can do it.
Oh, but I mean, you can ask anybody that's been at the 2 shows that we've had so far at the Hinge. That's the first song I play when the doors open. Usually it's Just Got Paid. I have a list, and it's Just Got Paid and Dragon Attack by Queen. Those are my 2 openers, then it just goes where it goes from there.
Yeah.
But it's important for those kids to have an opportunity to do that, and not just do that, but see that can be done.
Yes.
Not even for the musicians in the crowd, but for the kids in the crowd that are artists or do anything creative, to understand that, like, there can be a space for this just because.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be a thing that's a job that you have to make X amount of dollars, and it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's vastly more important.
Yeah.
I just do.
And that's why I'm so happy about you guys opening up the Hinge, because my son, once again Tony, he's starting his own band. He wants to be in the music scene.
Right.
And then when his band gets established, when they have a song, at least he's going to have some place that
And
he
they
can
will.
come and play.
Yeah, 110%.
Yeah.
And that's 110% what my aim is. It's not ever going to be a judgment for me whether it's a band I like or hate, or whether it's the most talented or the worst or any of that. None of that is important. It's have music, will play.
Right.
Like, that's it. So none of us started out, no band out there, Dave Grohl said it, like, the reason Nirvana was Nirvana is because they started off as teenagers and sounded like crap in their parents' garage and basement. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Nobody popped out a fully formed rock star.
Right. Right. It takes
Except for Freddie Mercury. He was probably...
That's true.
But yeah.
Yeah, and that's just like you when you got into the sound, right? You started off and then you worked your way into it, and then you
Right.
become good at it.
Right. And a lot of it, like, for years, even like I said, I worked with Paul O'Barry doing weddings and that kind of thing. And a lot of it was, I was familiar with, like I said, I was a Lego kid. I was a tearing apart the remote kid. So you could give me a patch bay and 200 cables, and it's like, all right, bet, click, 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 and know what's going where. But eventually it just got to a point where that kind of work couldn't survive by itself, because it's like, look, they need somebody to set it up and run it.
Right.
And I was always intimidated by that a little bit. I didn't do it in high school, but I eventually just didn't have a choice. And I enjoy doing it a lot. I'm not saying I'm the world's best at it, but it's not a competition. Like,
Right.
I figure at best, if I'm doing a good job, nobody knows I'm there. You know, like,
That's true. That's a good
same
analogy.
deal with the lighting guy
Right.
in theater. If the lighting guy is doing his job, nobody knows he exists.
Right.
If the
Yeah.
sound guy is doing his job, nobody knows he exists.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
you know.
And I have to give you guys props, because I've been upstairs at the Island Player with Bella, and I look at that soundboard, and I'm
Right.
like, "You're on your own, kid."
Right.
I'm like,
It's intimidating
Right,
for
it
some
is.
people. I mean, I've been in theater for years, and I've seen a lot of sound booths, and I still have no idea. If someone
Right.
would go tell me to do something, I'm like, I can't help you.
Right. And let me get on my soapbox for a second here. Nowadays, digital consoles have become much more in vogue, and I totally understand why. As somebody, I'm 39 years old. I grew up in an era kind of right between, analog and digital.
Yep.
And in a lot of respects, digital consoles make your life a lot easier, especially as far as traveling, because where somebody would used to have to carry around, like is in that venue right now,
Yeah.
a huge rack full of compressors and gates and EQs and all of that stuff, right? Now you go out and spend $3,000 to $5,000 on a digital console, and you click a button and it's there. But the problem with that, and part of the reason I like that a lot of what we have in the venue is older analog gear, that we've been lucky enough to have people like Anthony Stubelik donated that console for us to use. Greg Veerley, who owns a company down in Kingsland called Cav Sound, doing a lot of sound production, went digital several years ago, had a rack full of processors that when I reached out and said, look, I need to find some people that have some older analog gear they're wanting to get rid of, he sent me a message and told me to bring a friend in a truck and come pick it up and a photo of that rack.
Wow.
And gave me probably 16 to 20 channels of processing and everything I could have ever wished for to run in there. And in a lot of ways, I like having that older analog equipment, because I think that getting kids in the booth and teaching them what I'm doing there is maybe more challenging on that analog equipment, but it forces you to run sound with your ears instead of your eyes.
Right.
Because it would be like running lighting by sound. Otherwise, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I do, yeah.
Digital boards are great, but it's become increasingly easier for somebody to go, all right, well, this preset is for an SM58, and I don't care about a preset. Stop looking at the RTA. Close your eyes. Does it sound good in the room? If it doesn't, turn a knob and figure out what that knob does.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And eventually you take that experience and translate it to a digital console, and you understand why pre or post matters on a auxiliary send, or all of these in-depth things that, like you said, are kind of intimidating to figure out, make a lot more sense when you can look at a cable rack and go, all right, well, this cable's connected from this input to this output. And, you know, I think that makes a lot more sense to learn on that way, because it makes the digital side less intimidating.
Right.
Because in the digital world, it's easy to tap dance your way into a problem. And I like I said, I've been doing it for 20 years, and I've done a couple of tap dances like that ended in failure myself.
It's like almost everyone should drive a manual first before they go into an automatic.
Right. You say that, I don't know how to drive a stick shift.
Oh, gosh.
Don't worry, I'm learning how to drive a stick shift now. So
I did it once in high school, and I accidentally smacked my friend Dustin's face into the glass of his Toyota Tundra or whatever pickup truck. It was an older 4Runner, and I drove about 30 feet. And when I tried to shift and it jammed to a stop and his face smacked into the windshield, he was like, all right, that's enough. And that's the extent of my manual experience.
I learned when I was 16.
Right? I wish I had, but...
yeah. I know.
Yeah, I know. There's no excuse.
No, but, you know, it's just like everything else, right? Like, you learn how to use a soundboard, right? And
right.
So it's, you know, everyone's got their little skills.
Right. And like I said, I know that the reality is that most people that ever get behind a console and mix sound these days are going to end up on a digital board. It is going to be a lot easier to navigate and understand why X does Y to Z when you've done it on an analog console first.
Wow.
I believe that,
Yeah.
you know? And maybe that's just my experience, but I definitely think it makes you focus on doing more with less as well.
Right.
Like, you open that digital console up and you have every bell and whistle on every channel. It's like, okay, that's great, but what can you do with 3 bands VQ and a compressor?
What can you do?
Right. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm still figuring it out. Yeah. So, yeah.
You can play music. I don't know.
Right. Exactly. But I think that's valuable too. Taking a limited tool set and using that to sculpt the thing and understanding why the mic placement matters more than what you can do to fix it in post.
That's true.
You know?
That's true. Yeah, I've noticed that. 'Cause being on stage, if my mic is like here in my mouth, it sounds like this and it doesn't sound right.
Right.
Or if it's too far away.
Right, you disappear.
Yeah, you
Oh,
disappear.
you want the one that makes me the craziest? Brandon, you can ask Brandon Priest about this one because I'm constantly giving him grief for it, because rappers and hardcore metal singers both do it equally and in volume, and it's great if you've on like $1 million tour and you got somebody you're paying $60,000 a year to make it work. This is not how you hold a microphone. Like, I just grabbed the head of the microphone, by the way.
Yeah,
no video anywhere, but it's that kind of thing. And like, that's, you realize very quickly that things like mic technique matter and mic placement, and you have to learn to get those things right up front before you're going to have something usable on the back end. And I think, like I said, analog makes that more challenging, but kind of more, I don't know if more rewarding is the right way to say it.
That makes sense,
But
though.
yeah,
That makes sense.
Yeah, because you actually have to work it.
Right.
It's like you're putting everything together, putting a product with
Right.
it, just hitting a couple of presets. And
right. Well, and when you do it with a digital console, you pull something up, you get a basic, turn up a gain knob, and you go, all right, that's loud enough. It still doesn't sound like I want it to. And you just can't help it. The propensity is like, all right, well, what else can I add? Well, I got a gate, and I got a compressor, and I got a limiter, and I got this, and I got this, and it's almost easier, and like I said, more challenging, but easier. It's kind of a dichotomy to say, all right, well, this sounds X or Y or Z, and I've got 3 bands of EQ and a single knob compressor to do something about it. Good luck.
Wow. Now, when you look at a room, right, because you work with the theater, right?
Right.
So you have the Glen Academy Theater, the Ritz, and then you got the Hinge, all, of course, different sizes.
Right.
How much does that matter when you're designing or doing the sound for it?
How can I put this mildly? It's easily the single biggest influencing factor.
Okay.
It's by miles. 'Cause that's the thing, like the Ritz is probably the best example. We have a pretty solid sound system in there.
Yeah.
It's not brand new, but it's a pretty solid system. The problem is that the Ritz Theater was built in 1899 as an
Yes.
opera house
Yep.
for people that went in there and sang loud. Right?
Yep.
They weren't wearing microphones.
No.
They weren't being broadcast through speakers. So it's not really what the space is designed for. So you also get into the science and engineering side of it and understanding what sound waves do when they interact with hard surfaces and
The acoustics.
right, and the
yeah.
acoustics and the science of acoustics and how much that matters. And you can spend ungodly amounts of money on PA equipment these days, on speakers, and it's great because you buy a powered speaker that has the exact right amount of power to drive the driver in it with the crossover in the right place and all of that. If you put it in a room that sounds bad, guess what?
It's going to sound bad.
It's going to sound bad.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Ritz is a huge
Yeah.
theater. And I remember doing shows there. And I think I remember doing shows not mic'd up.
Oh, yeah. Heather, I mean, don't be wrong. We have, like, when we do Penguin Project,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
When we do Penguin Project, those kids wear microphones because it's a musical and it's a big cast. But when we do dramatic shows in there, Heather, even now, when she does curtain speeches for anything or when she does Heather does not use microphones in that space because actors project.
Yeah.
And too much, you get into a situation where you put a microphone on somebody before they understand the projecting part. I can't make it loud. I can't make it quiet sound louder.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you just got to speak up and you got to act like that microphone is not there
Right.
and put that sound on the back wall.
Yeah.
And, so I think honestly, the Ritz and Glen Academy, Glen Academy too is an incredibly challenging room acoustically.
I was going to say, because that's an older building, right?
Right. It is, but a large part of that too, they renovated that right before I went to school there in like the late 90s. And they had this architect come in and do this beautiful, dreamy space that's historically accurate. And you know how much that architect knew about acoustics?
Probably nothing.
Nothing.
I'm holding up a 0.
Yeah, because it's interesting you say that, and cause it is a beautiful theater, so nothing
is.
against that. But as a theater actor, when I first went in there, I looked at this and I was thinking to myself, I don't think the sound is like, it didn't feel like it was designed for
Amplification.
Right,
essentially.
yeah.
Right. And there are a lot of spaces like that. What's the big church on the north end of the island? Not Christ Church, but the other big church out there. Not Frederica. It's where Golden Isles Live does some of their concerts and stuff like that.
Okay.
It's a beautiful space, and I'm just totally blanking on the name of the church right now. Maybe we'll remember before we're done here.
You're gonna remember tonight. You're gonna go to sleep.
I'm going to send you a text message
Yeah.
at 3 a.m. And they have a full pipe organ in there that I'm sure a lot of money and effort went into making, and it sounds unbelievable in that space. It
Wow.
is like soul shaking when they get into the lower register of that organ. But that room was built and designed for that organ to sound good in it,
Right.
not for putting speakers in there and amplifying a 4-piece rock band. And it is incredibly challenging to do that in a space that is not designed for it. But that's kind of part of the challenge that I enjoy. And I'm not saying I ace it 100% of the time every time, but you put your best foot forward. You put your best foot forward
I
and
always
do
put-
what you can do,
I always put my fart forward.
Oh, yeah, it's Wesley Church.
Well, okay, yeah.
Wesley
Yeah.
Church.
Yeah.
Beautiful space. Have y'all been out there?
Yes.
Unbelievable. It's a beautiful space. I imagine going out there and hearing a choir sing on a Sunday is probably a pretty transformative experience. The guy upstairs with the microphones on the choir is probably bald because he's pulled all of his hair out a long time ago. Because it is a difficult space to mix in. And it's
Yeah.
not like, oh, it's bad, somebody messed up. It's just not what it's designed for.
Right.
So, yeah.
Now, what about the Hinge?
The Hinge, surprisingly, has been a lot better than I expected it to be. Because it's really, if you've been here at all, you'll have seen, it's essentially a big concrete box.
Yeah.
But there's something about the fact that we are kind of in an asymmetrical setup in there, or not dead even in the space, helps a little bit. But like I said, without going into an hour of nerding about acoustics and science, generally parallel surfaces and 90-degree corners are your worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it came down to getting in there and hanging the speakers in a way where they weren't aiming directly at flat surfaces.
Okay.
That way you have dispersion that breaks up more than bounces right back towards the source and makes things muddy. And another large part of that was me and my buddy Levi Hamilton, who runs Audio Boogie Studios here in town, came over here one night with my laptop, with a program called REW, and my 2-channel interface, and took a measurement microphone and hooked it up, and then used REW with a pink noise generator, when pink noise is all frequencies at equal energy.
Okay.
White noise is all frequencies at equal volume. It's all right.
Science. I was gonna say magic.
And we came in here with that pink noise and put that microphone in probably half a dozen different spaces in the room and listened at like 110 decibels. Oof. Right? And then you go back and you take screenshots of every time what the RTA, what the real-time analysis looks like in the room in each individual space, and you start to identify, all right, well, there's a spike at about 450 hertz, and it's deficient at 800, and you use an EQ to kind of adjust the speakers to the space. And that's a step that gets skipped oftentimes, especially when bands or actors or whatever group using PA speakers sets up, is that step gets skipped and everything is chaos beyond. Because every 450 hertz spike gets amplified when you get somebody gets on a microphone and they've got that 450 hertz bump in their voice, and suddenly it sounds like, and it just keeps, it's like a self-eating worm. It just keeps getting bigger and not ending.
Yeah.
So
I'm learning a lot.
I'm learning a lot too. This is way more than just turning on the soundboard and maybe making sure you can hear the bass, you can hear the treble, you can hear the singer all at a equal amount.
And you would not believe how many times I've run into this situation in different churches that I've worked in around the area and stuff like that. Not just churches, but any general space. The first impulse is always, oh, well, X is too loud or too quiet. It's not that it's too loud. It's that there's an offending frequency in that person's voice that is clawing its way into your brain. Oh. Right? And if you go into a room and find that frequency is 450 hertz, you turn that frequency down, and suddenly it's not clawing into your brain anymore.
Right.
And that person's voice sounds more natural because it's not boomy. Like St. Glenn Academy, that was one of the things, like I said, that can be a challenging room.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things I did when I got in there and set my speakers up when we did Chicago, which the kids won a ensemble award for at the Schulers. Congratulations, you hard-working little teenagers, you.
Some talented ones. Some
crazy talented ones. Yes. I don't remember none of that when I was in high school. We had some great actors. But anyways, we went in there and set those speakers up, and a lot of people were saying that, oh, well, everybody's voices aren't loud enough over the music. It's not that their voices were not loud enough. It's that you got to think about the frequency band as like a box that you can fill up with a certain amount of stuff, right?
Okay.
And if somebody's voice predominantly cuts through at 1K, but the music is also blaring at 1K, they're just fighting each other.
Yeah.
So you take that music track, and instead of turning it down and turning the vocal up, you take that music track and you cut a little bit of 1K out of it. And suddenly it gives the people's voices rooms to breathe. And you wouldn't believe how many times people would come up to me and go, oh man, it sounds so much better now. I don't know what you did. That's fine. I don't expect everybody to know what I do, because that'd be like
magic.
Me. Right. I try to work on my own car every once in a while, but I don't know what I'm doing. And I take my car to a mechanic and it's broken down. When I get it back, it runs. Right? I don't really question it anymore than I have to.
So is that the same thing with a live band, where sometimes you can hear the music just fine, but you can barely hear or understand the vocals?
Very much so. Very much. And there's there's a little bit of a kind of general guideline for different instruments, different people's voices, but it's just such a piece-by-piece kind of unique situation to any given instrument or any given voice that you just kind of learn. I'll be honest, my ear, it's kind of a cosmic joke, like how bad my ears are for the fact that I run sound mostly for a living. It's kind of hilarious sitting down and like me listening to a song and trying to figure out how to play it on a bass. It's just dirt, nope, 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 there it is, right? But there are ways to use the EQ section on an analog or a digital console that even if you can't figure it out just by listening, it's easy to grab a knob. You kind of sweep until you find it. Right. So you have a parametric EQ lets you take and select a frequency and then turn it down or turn it up, right? So you take that knob and you turn it up and you sweep through the frequency until you find the one that's clawing a hole in your brain. Then you turn that frequency down, right? Sounds simple, and it is simple, but you still have to know that that's how that works.
Yeah. See, I would think it was just a volume thing. So like,
me too.
And sometimes it is.
Turn the volume. So you really have to understand when you come to live music, like what instruments they're doing,
right?
How they sing, right? Because you have to like kind of. Because I was just kind of thinking about like some of the most recognizable voices that we listen to,
right?
You know, like Bon Scott when he was, God rest his soul,
right?
I mean, that's a piercing sound, and like Ronnie James Dio. I mean, no one can copy that voice, but you know, anytime you hear it, you know who that is,
right?
As a sound engineer,
right,
you have to be able to know how to handle these things, because I mean, it's like Bon Scott's ear piercing,
right? And sometimes it's not like I was saying. I give Brandon grief about how singers cup a mic. That's all good and well to say that, do that joke, but at the end of the day, folks have a technique that is just how they do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the larger part of being a sound engineer, is being adaptable enough to understand that they're going to do the thing you don't want them to do with the mic.
Right.
It's just going to happen.
Like Roger Daltrey spinning the mic around.
Right, exactly. I hope that cable belonged to him at least. And it's just understanding all you can really do is the best that you can do with the given situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a fine line between doing it well and trying to be the boss. And that's not what a sound guy is there for. So, a sound engineer, sound tech, front of house, whatever you want to call it, you know?
So are the mics durable enough, or are they somewhat delicate? Because I've heard two different things. I've handled mics before with public speaking, things like that. And they're like, hand it to me on like a silk pillow with feathers. And,
the butler's got the
thing draped over his arm. You only use white gloves with this. And just, and then other people like just grip it and rip it. And,
right. It depends on the type of mic. Like dynamic microphones, like what we're using here, pretty tough. The kind of classic of all time, the SM58 that Shure makes, that you'll hear people talk about as a handheld vocal mic, is literally the hammer of the audio industry. Like, I have used an SM58 as an actual hammer on more than one occasion, and they're great, and they sound like they sound, and it's a very widely accepted sound. But at the same time, you turn around and take something like a ribbon microphone, it captures sound in a different way and is a much more fragile thing. So it might be something you don't see on a live stage and in this run and gun type situation as much you would see like in a controlled environment in a recording studio. But it's always about the right choice. Like we were talking about before we started recording, a condenser mic is great because it gets all the clarity, right?
Yeah.
But the joke that I always give people is like, if you put a condenser mic in a situation in the wrong space.
I don't know what just happened.
The AC went off.
Okay. That was weird. I thought the whole...
Right? If you take a condenser mic in the wrong situation in a room that doesn't sound good, right? All you're doing is amplifying the suck. You can easily end up in a spot where, like, the thing that I always joke around with people is that you can, like, if you use a condenser mic without a shock mount and without the right kind of environment and situation, you can shuffle your feet at the base of a mic stand and people can tell what color shoes you're wearing because they capture so much detail. That's great, but it's not always the right solution, you know?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different types of mics.
A lot. And
I'm not going to ask you to sit there and name all of them.
Right.
But just for, like, theater goers.
Right.
People come to the Island Players and they'll see us wearing the
like headset style.
Headsets, yeah.
Which, you know, I might be burning myself here, but I never had to use a mic on stage until Island Players.
Right.
But that's not the only mic that's on stage.
Right.
There's a lot of things that are hidden that people from the audience don't know.
Right. Things that are hidden in set pieces that might be picking up. Right. Floor mics are really popular for a lot of theater use, but Essentially, you don't have a whole lot of variety so much in the type of microphone because you basically have like dynamic and condenser microphones, ribbons, but there are basically 2 or 3 categories you can break that into. But what you also get a lot into is what's called a polar pattern and kind of the way a microphone picks up, because you can get something that is cardioid that might pick you up 90 degrees sound in front of you, right? When you go to say it's super cardioid or hypercardioid, and it's basically tightening up the pattern so it picks up less of the background noise around that source. So like if you end up on a stage that's really loud with multiple loud instruments and loud amps, you'll see singers using vocal microphones that are a much tighter pattern. That way it rejects a lot of that outside sound and gets more. But the problem is that with this mic, I can kind of go side to side and you mostly hear me, right? You can still hear me off access pretty okay. But like I have an Audix OM5 in my box that I like using as my own personal vocal microphone. It is on. Can't hear a word if I move my face 2 inches to the left. It just goes away. You know?
Yeah. That's like everyone who's giving their speeches, and all of a sudden the mic is down here. And
right.
Like,
the belly button.
That mic,
get it up.
You know,
put
the mic up to
They're holding it like Bob Barker, you know?
Yeah.
They just don't have the 16-inch long stick with the mic. Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of it is that and just understanding that technique. And like somebody that didn't know any better might take that OM5 that I'm talking about and go, oh, well, this sounds bad. And it's not an insulting thing to say. I don't mean it that way, but it's not that it sounds bad. It's you don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
And for me, I've always been kind of a close singer. A lot of times I end up lips on a microphone, you know what I mean? Especially in the moment, you get hyped, you know? But for me, that tighter pattern makes a lot more sense than having something that picks me up from 2 feet away, you know? So
yeah, this whole sound stuff is so interesting, so intriguing, especially since I got my son that plays guitar, Bella that's in it. But let's talk about something that's coming up here pretty soon.
Okay.
So we got the Dirt Kid Prom.
We do. Ashley Ember has been doing the Dirt Kid thing, the Dirt Kid brand. I don't know what you want to call it.
Dirt Kid.
The Dirt Kid universe.
Yep.
Is that fair? Dirt Kid universe. That's what we're going with. She started out a couple years ago doing Dirt Kid magazine, which is kind of a counterculture magazine in response to, you know, the more upper crust. I don't mean that offensively. I love a lot of those folks too, and Kathy that does the I'm With the Band blog and all that, but it was more of a counterculture, the folks that don't get their representation in those magazines, just like us putting on metal and punk and hardcore bands, you know? And her sister and her sister's boyfriend did a lot of work getting that magazine together. I actually wrote an article for one of the issues that they put together, and it was great. But it's a lot of work and a lot of money to put out, especially when they were doing it without advertising dollars and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that kind of ran its course. Hopefully it hasn't fully run its course. Ashley.
I enjoyed it.
Right. So. And that kind of ran its course, but then she was approached, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, within the last little while here by Paulie Meacham at 93.7 The Bridge to do the Dirt Kid radio show, which has been gangbusters. The whole station has benefited from that. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
It's been really cool. And it's a thing that made me feel, once we got the idea going with the Hinge, it made me feel like it was something more and more that this place was ready to try again.
Yes.
And support more of that alive and original, you know.
Yep.
And so she's been doing that successfully. And something that Anthony and I always talked about, and an idea that I'd always brewed. I remember years ago walking into the gymnasium at Howard Coffin Park. Have you ever been over there?
I've been to Howard Coffin Park, but then
the building over there itself, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, I wasn't there for a great reason. We were there for memorial service, and I remember walking into that space, and it was that classic carpeted basketball floor with the stage in the back that had like the light blue curtains and and immediately it was like, oh man, we should like have a punk rock prom in here. I mean, it looked like you could have hit the lights, put up the clamshell and everything. It would have been Back to the Future with, you know, Michael J playing Chuck Berry songs on stage, the whole nine. It was crazy. And it's just always something we had talked about, and we kind of revisited the idea earlier this year. And so, now suddenly, you know, we kind of talked about it, and I went, well, if we just had a space that we had control over, that we could, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here we are, May 11th. We're doing it. We're doing the Dirt Kid Prom.
Dirt Kid Prom.
So May 11th.
May 11th. Dancing with Ghosts is a band from Jacksonville that's coming up. They're going to be doing a mix of originals and covers, even though, no covers in our venue. It's not like that. It's whatever. We want people to have fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be our first 21 and up event.
Okay.
Just by the nature of it, because whatever, you kids get your own prom. Deal with it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an adult prom.
But this is very much kind of the prom that some of us never got to have. We were talking about that today. I never went to prom when I was in high school. As a 400-pound, size 54 waist, chunky kid in high school, I barely talked to anybody. Like, I didn't go to prom, And I think it's going to be a really fun experience. We have some tricks up our sleeves. We're going to have some cake and some glow sticks and some other stuff. So I'm a theater kid too, so I mean.
So what's the overall theme?
The original kind of thing that we were joking about and talking about was Enchantment Under the Sea, like the Back to the Future thing. It's kind of Enchantment Under the Sea meets Friday the 13th. Ooh. Not quite Carrie, not blood covered, maybe blood splattered.
Fake blood
cast off.
Yeah, blood patinaed.
Blood drizzle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, kind of like a pizza, but but yeah, it's gonna be really fun. Dancing with Ghosts is playing, and they're gonna be putting on a really fun show. I haven't seen them live personally, but they've been awesome because they've been doing a lot of work promoting it ahead of time as well. Yeah, it's always nice to feel like the band is in a partnership with you doing that kind of thing. Yeah. Whether it be a special event like this or a regular show. And we're looking really forward to it. It's going to be cool.
So how do people get tickets?
They can go to thehinge.ludus.com. Ludus, Ludus. Thehinge.ludus.com. And buy tickets there. It's a pre-sale thing because we got to get a head count,
Yeah. And what time does the prom start?
We're going to be starting at 7 o'clock, more than likely.
Okay.
I don't remember because the time isn't on the flyer in front of it, but I believe it's 7 o'clock.
7-ish.
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
Yeah, exactly. We'll open the doors sometime around then, but the band's going to be playing probably 2 sets. We'll take a little break. We will be crowning a king and queen, really crowning. Or king and king, or queen and queen, or whatever works. 2 pigeons. Whoever gets voted in, Yeah. And my friend Heather Purvis, who used to work for the Leather Lady at the Pecan Park Farmers Market, flea market down in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. She also works for Gulfstream and does upholstery. It's a very niche thing, but she's totally into cosplay and all that good stuff. Has done some really awesome costumes in the past, and she's making us a set of crowns. And we're really trying to go all out with it. I mean, trust me, if it was up to us, we'd have valet parking.
I was going to say, you're expecting limos to
yeah. If people want to go that route, we're not here to stop them.
Right.
There are plenty of places in town that rent limos, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I would
just saying.
You know what I would like to do is get a hearse and have a limo hearse.
Ooh, that would be nice. You'd have people piling out of the back like a clown car,
Well, no, I would probably have it cut open, on the top.
Open top. Yeah, do the Savannah. Yeah,
kind of Savannah ghost store thing. But
just have a couple coffins. You just got to ride in the coffin.
Yeah. Put some wheels on it, shoot it out the back, just flying down the street.
This way you don't have to pay for valet parking.
Exactly.
Just eject them out the back.
Exactly, but
sounds amazing.
It's going to be great. It's going to be really fun, and the band's going to play a couple sets, and then we are going to DJ the rest of the night away with the prom classics and the things that you want to hear.
Yeah.
Or that you don't want to hear, but you're going to hear them anyways, because I'm the sound guy and I get to control that.
So you can put on Boys to Men then, if you wanted to.
Oh, I'm a Philly kid. We are definitely playing Boys to Men.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You gotta. It's the prom. You can't have prom without Boys to Men. It doesn't.
It's Dirt Kid Prom, right? We're gonna rock out.
Right. Yeah, but look, even the Dirt Kids, you gotta get down with Boys to Men.
Everyone's got to get that.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
I have to admit,
I
I was listening to Ozzy's Boneyard coming over here, but before that, I was listening to Pretty in Pink.
Right. It is what it is. We all have our memories. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll do that. When I'm cooking, when I'm doing the cheesecake thing, I'll say, Alexa, play Sticks.
Right.
Or
absolutely.
They'll play all sticks, or if I'm really doing a lot, give me the Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's the thing for me. At the end of the day, like, yes, very much a lot of the theme is going to be punk rock. And if I'm picking my druthers, you're usually going to find me listening to heavier music. That does not mean that I don't put on a Justin Timberlake record every while and sing it at the top of my lungs, because pop music is pop music, you know, like, so.
It's always fun, like Alexa, but then other people's Alexas are going to go off because we said it, and it's just fun.
Yeah.
Alexa.
Can I try?
Yeah,
Alexa. Play Justified by Justin Timberlake.
Now everyone's Alexa's going to play it.
You're welcome, JT. You're welcome for the plays. Send me my 3 cents.
That's right.
So I mean, yeah, we've been talking about Dirt Kid, but
that was Hootie.
Let's inform, because maybe some people want to listen to Dirt Kid Radio.
Also, yeah, Dirt Kid Radio is on 93.7 The Bridge every Sunday at 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock. It's a new show every 2 weeks. The one that'll be re-airing this upcoming Sunday or tomorrow is a repeat about the history of the pop punk and punk rock scene in the late 90s, early 2000s here. Positive Outlook Productions and Mina Mars, they all started doing that when her kids were teenagers. It's the same deal. They wanted somewhere positive for their kids to hang out instead of being hoodlums.
Yeah.
So they went and they were all hoodlums in a fun place together at the same time, you know. Teenagers going to teenage.
That's true.
Yes.
But it's on 93.7thebridge.com. You can go and listen live there. Yep. It's easy to find.
And a lot of people don't realize, but it's a big community, that the punk grunge in Brunswick.
It really is. And I was really surprised, not just by locally. We had some people show up that you don't normally see at the bars and at that kind of thing.
Yes.
But we also had a fair number of people that traveled here from out of town and from Savannah and from Jacksonville, from bigger towns, because people are hungry for live music.
Yes.
And for original music.
Yes. And to me, honestly, the grunge, the rock, the metal, the punk.
Yeah.
Like, I have nothing against any of the bands that play at, the Study or at Tipsy's or 1509 or whatever. Like, I love the Brunswick music community. It's amazing. But to get someplace where if you want to go listen to metal, grunge.
And there should be.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
There has to be a variety, because, you list a lot of these places and it's pretty much the same kind of music.
Right.
Which is fine. I mean, I have a very eclectic taste.
Right.
But I have to admit, my punk goes from 1975 to 1985.
That's okay.
I remember, because I'm dating myself, I actually saw Sid Vicious at the Rathskettler.
Okay, that was before or after he killed Nancy, or no? Do we think he did it? I don't even know.
We were just kids,
right?
But it was just the fact that we got
Crime podcast.
Things just took a turn for the dark side.
It's crazy, but so I would like to listen,
to
the radio show, just to kind of get caught up on some of the newer stuff, because I always tease my kids, if it hasn't been recorded before 1993, I probably don't know it.
Right, yeah. And that's fine. That's the great thing, is I think that it's cool. Obviously, you got teenagers coming out to our shows at the Hinge, but it's even cooler to see their parents coming out to support, because a lot of their parents are people that I was teenagers with, and we were out doing that at the waterfront. We'd have 150 people to show up to see a band they'd never heard of before. God forbid you have a little adventure in your life. You know what I mean? It's $5 or $10. Spend the money. Yeah. Watch the band.
And then for me, and actually for me and Jen, it's reversed, because my parents never took me to any of the concerts, and Jen's parents never took her to concerts. So for us, we want to take Tony to all the shows,
and give him a chance to learn it and figure it out for himself, and see. And maybe he's a classical music nerd, and that's fine. He's hopefully not.
No, he's like, I mean, this kid amazes me, because you put on any song from Nirvana, even a deep cut, and he knows all the lyrics, and I'm like, how in the world do you know all this? And because he's like The Cure, Bad Religion, Nirvana,
because that stuff endures, and it speaks to multiple generations. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and I get that, and that's fine, but and that's the big thing for us. And I mean, hopefully we eventually we have some other plans in mind for not just musical shows. Like, there are some more avant-garde forms of art and experimental film and things like that any town that kind of starts to experience cultural growth like Brunswick has in the last, decade or so?
Yeah.
I mean, I've lived here for 25-ish years, and I'm here to say this town was a desert when I moved here. Yeah. And I mean, I was 13, so I don't know how much I was really around, and Yeah. But it's really awesome to see that coming to life around here, and we just want to be a part of that, and to be able to help folks. Like, even more important than kids being here that want to see the bands, there are bands that want to be seen.
Right.
And they want to get out and play for people in a place they've never been. And yes, it's the music, but it's the experience of getting out. And I mean, who doesn't love a good road trip?
Right.
Right.
And that's the whole reason we started this podcast. 'Cause,
right.
Like, people ask and they're hungry for this.
Right.
It's just they don't know it's here, but it's here.
Right.
And it's going to be here to stay.
Very much.
So.
Yeah.
The Hinge is definitely filling a void.
Yeah.
Of something that's needed now in this town, because the town has grown.
Yeah.
And
Brandon, I got to give credit here where credit is due, because when I was a teenager, these kind of shows were going on, and even in my early 20s. But there was a large chunk of time between now and like when Heebie-Jeebie shut down, where Brandon, as much as he could, was still soldiering right along and booking shows at the waterfront and struggling to get people to show up because, the tide always changes. Things are in and out of popularity. But he was somebody that really, he was steady at it and kept pushing for it and kept, I say it a lot. It's almost cliche. It is cliche. You talk about it or you be about it.
Right.
And Brandon was being about it and putting his own money up and paying these bands to come here. And some nights, I'm sure he had shows where he went home going, man, I can't believe I just put that money out for 22 people. But he kept doing it because it's important.
It's important.
And it's gonna continue to be important.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So if you guys listening, if you haven't, so what's your Instagram page? You guys have a Instagram page, Facebook for the Hinge?
We do. It's on Facebook. You can just search for the Hinge at the Blue Door.
Okay.
If you check Instagram, it's the Hinge GA.
Okay.
Like Georgia, but short.
So, yeah, make sure you guys check out their social medias on Facebook and Instagram for all the upcoming events, especially the Dirt Kid Prom that's coming up real shortly here on May 11th.
May 11th, yep.
So make sure you get your tickets. You don't want to miss this. But Brian, thank you for being on here.
For sure. Thank you guys for the invite. It was not something that was on my radar until you reached out, but this has been fun.
Yeah, and that's why we're here. Like I mentioned, like it's to get the community together.
Right.
Let the community know what's out there, the people that are here, especially someone like you. You're not someone that's in the background. Just want to let you know that.
Right. That's fair.
You're an important person.
Well, I appreciate that.
In the whole music industry. I
appreciate that.
The theater industry, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. And anyways, I'm going to go hide in the booth again.
Anyway, people come down to the Hinge. Let your inner rocker come out.
Yeah.
Have some fun.
Yeah.
And I know.
Oh, when's the next show too? You have May 11th, and there's another.
May 11th is Dirt Kid Prom, and then May 25th we have Second Impact, Illuminate Me, Mourn, and Dying Whale come into play. And if you've never heard a Dying Whale before, it's really loud and really heavy.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
It's going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to that one too.
Me too.
So.
Bring your earplugs. Protect your hearing. Don't be a nerd.
Well, Brian, thank you so much. So this is the Beard signing off.
And the Buddha.
And the other beard?
Yes, the other beard.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.